The kitchen was already alive before sunrise. Steel pans clattered. Knives struck the board with sharp rhythm. Heat rose from the stoves like a wall of fire. And somewhere in the middle of that storm stood a young chef who refused to step back. For Gordon Ramsay, high performance was never comfortable. It was dangerous. It demanded more than talent. It demanded obsession. Long before the world knew the name Gordon Ramsay, he was just another young man trying to escape a difficult childhood in Britain. The odds were not in his favor. His family struggled. Money was scarce, and the future often felt uncertain. At one point, he believed football would be his way out. He trained hard, pushed his body, and dreamed of a professional career. But one brutal injury changed everything. In a single moment, the dream collapsed. For many people, that would have been the end of the story. For Gordon Ramsay, it was only the beginning. Because sometimes the path that breaks your heart is the same path that leads you to your purpose. And in a small kitchen filled with pressure, discipline, and relentless ambition, Gordon Ramsay began building the life that would one day make him one of the most famous chefs in the world. Long before the television cameras, the restaurants, and the global fame, Gordon Ramsay was just a boy growing up in a difficult home. His childhood was far from glamorous. The family moved constantly. Living in small council houses across the UK, stability was rare, money was tight, and inside the home, life could be unpredictable. His father struggled with alcohol and often brought chaos into the household. For a young Gordon Ramsay, home was not always a place of comfort. School brought its own challenges. There were moments that stayed with him for years. At lunchtime, some children paid for meals while others lined up with government lunch vouchers. Those children stood in a separate queue. It was a quiet but powerful reminder of who had money and who did not. Gordon Ramsay never felt ashamed of his mother or the food she put on the table. What hurt was the feeling of being separated from everyone else. Yet those moments planted something inside him. Hunger. Not just hunger for food, but hunger for something better. His mother became the strongest influence in his life. She worked multiple jobs to support the family. There were mornings when she left before sunrise and nights when she came home exhausted. Even on Christmas morning, when most children woke up to see their parents, Gordon sometimes woke to an empty house because his mother was already at work. Watching her struggle taught him an early lesson about resilience. For a while, sport became his escape. Gordon Ramsay showed real talent in football. Tall, strong, and naturally left-footed. He trained intensely and eventually played at a competitive level connected to Rangers. For a young man growing up with limited opportunities, football looked like the door to a different future. But life rarely follows the plan we imagine. During a match, everything changed in a single moment. A heavy tackle destroyed his knee. The injury tore crucial ligaments and effectively ended his chances of becoming a professional footballer. For many young athletes, that kind of moment can destroy confidence. Gordon Ramsay chose the different response. Instead of dwelling on the loss, he searched for another path forward. Around that time, he began spending more time in small kitchens, learning the basics of food preparation. His mother sometimes worked near restaurants, and Gordon would help with simple tasks like preparing vegetables. Something about the kitchen caught his attention. There was structure, discipline, pressure, but there was also creativity and possibility. Soon he enrolled in catering college, not because he knew he would become a world-famous chef, but because it offered independence. It offered a way to move forward. At that point, he was simply a young man determined to build a life different from the one he had grown up in. What Gordon Ramsay did not know yet was that the kitchen would demand the same intensity as professional sport. Long hours, physical exhaustion, total commitment. But he was already prepared for that, because the hunger that began in those difficult childhood years had never disappeared. The professional kitchen is not a comfortable place. It is loud, intense, and brutally honest. Every plate is judged, every mistake is exposed. For Gordon Ramsay, this environment became the proving ground where discipline and ambition collided. One of the most defining moments in his early career came when he began working alongside Marco Pierre White. At the time, Marco Pierre White was already considered one of the most influential chefs in Britain. His kitchen demanded absolute precision, and the standards were unforgiving. For Gordon Ramsay, it was exactly the environment he needed. He worked beside Marco Pierre White for nearly 2 years, often standing in the kitchen for 16 hours a day. The pressure was relentless. The expectation was simple: perfection or nothing. Marco Pierre White treated cooking like art. He could place food on a plate with the confidence of a painter finishing a masterpiece. Watching that level of skill changed Gordon Ramsay's understanding of what food could be. Then one day, an unexpected test arrived. Marco Pierre White was away from the restaurant for a short period. Suddenly, the responsibility for running the kitchen fell on the shoulders of a young Gordon Ramsay. He was only 22 years old. The restaurant was already operating at a 2 Michelin star level. Expectations from diners were extremely high. Every guest expected excellence. At first, the pressure was enormous. But something remarkable happened. Plate after plate returned to the kitchen completely empty. Guests were finishing every dish. Diners left the restaurant impressed, satisfied, and often surprised by the quality of the food. In that moment, Gordon Ramsay realized something important. Everything his mentor had taught him was working. The discipline, the attention to detail, the relentless repetition of technique. But that moment also sparked a new realization. If he wanted to become truly great, he could not simply imitate Marco Pierre White forever. He needed to develop his own identity. To do that, Gordon Ramsay pushed himself even further. He moved between some of the most respected kitchens in Europe, learning new techniques and absorbing knowledge from every chef he encountered. Instead of staying comfortable in one position, he deliberately stepped into unfamiliar roles to strengthen his weaknesses. In one restaurant, he chose to work in the bakery section, even though he was already skilled in meat and fish preparation. Baking required precision, patience, and chemistry. It forced him to learn an entirely different discipline. This mindset became his secret advantage. While many young chefs tried to protect their reputation, Gordon Ramsay focused on becoming a sponge. He absorbed every piece of knowledge available to him. Every sauce, every cooking method, every detail mattered. The hours were exhausting. 16-hour shifts were normal. Sleep was limited. Sundays were often spent recovering from pure physical exhaustion. But Gordon Ramsay never considered quitting, because with every new skill he mastered, he could see the path opening in front of him. The kitchen was no longer just a job. It was becoming the place where he could build something unique. And for someone who had spent his childhood searching for a way out, that realization was powerful. Success rarely arrives without risk. By the time Gordon Ramsay had spent several years working in elite kitchens across Europe, he had already experienced the intensity of the culinary world. Michelin star restaurants demanded absolute discipline. The pressure never stopped. Eventually, the pace began to take its toll. In his mid-20s, after years of relentless work in 2-star and 3-star establishments, Ramsay felt completely exhausted. The kitchen had given him knowledge, skill, and discipline, but it had also drained him physically and mentally. At 25, he made a decision that surprised many people around him. He stepped away. Instead of remaining in the traditional restaurant world, Gordon Ramsay traveled to Monaco and began working as a private chef on a luxury yacht. The job was completely different from the chaos of restaurant kitchens. Meals were prepared in a small galley. The hours were lighter. The atmosphere was calm. For the first time in years, life slowed down. The yacht traveled through the Mediterranean, visiting Sardinia, Sicily, and the south of France before crossing the Atlantic to the Caribbean. Ramsay spent months cooking for a private owner while diving, exploring new places, and allowing his mind to reset. Those 12 months became one of the most peaceful periods of his life. But something inside him was still restless. The quiet life was comfortable, but it lacked the intensity he had grown used to. Gordon Ramsay did not want comfort. He wanted challenge. He wanted pressure. He wanted the opportunity to prove himself. So he returned to London. Soon after, a new opportunity appeared. With support from contacts connected to Marco Pierre White, Ramsay was offered the chance to open his first restaurant. He was only 27 years old. There was just one problem. He knew almost nothing about running a business. He understood cooking. He understood kitchens. But ownership, finances, and restaurant management were completely new territory. Even more concerning, the restaurant he was entering had already struggled financially. In reality, the partnership meant he had inherited a share of the restaurant's debt. It was a massive risk. Yet Gordon Ramsay moved forward anyway. The small restaurant was located on Fulham Road in London. The kitchen was tiny, the conditions far from glamorous, and the expectations extremely high. But Ramsay approached the challenge with the same relentless focus he had learned during his training years. Within months, the restaurant began attracting attention. The food was different. It was lighter than the traditional French cuisine dominating fine dining at the time. Ramsay focused on delicate techniques such as careful poaching, precise grilling, and balanced sauces that avoided heavy cream and butter. Critics noticed, customers noticed. Within just 3 years, the restaurant achieved 2 Michelin stars. What had once been a struggling establishment transformed into one of the most exciting dining destinations in London. For Gordon Ramsay, the risk had paid off, but the success created a new problem. Despite the restaurant's achievements, he still did not truly own his future, and that realization would soon push him toward an even bigger gamble. By the late 1990s, Gordon Ramsay had already proven himself inside the restaurant world. But his reputation was about to expand far beyond the kitchen. When he opened restaurant Gordon Ramsay in London, the goal was clear. He was no longer working to prove himself to mentors. He was building something that carried his own name and his own standards. The pressure was enormous. Everything was on the line. His savings, his family's security, his professional reputation. Ramsay often described this period as a moment of total jeopardy. Failure would not only damage his career, it could destroy everything he had built. But once again, the pressure sharpened his focus. Restaurant Gordon Ramsay quickly gained attention for its precision and discipline. Every dish leaving the kitchen carried the same philosophy Ramsay had developed during his training years: simplicity, balance, and relentless attention to detail. Within a short time, the restaurant achieved what many chefs spend their entire careers chasing: 3 Michelin stars. For Gordon Ramsay, this recognition changed everything. It placed him among the most respected chefs in the world, and confirmed that his approach to cooking had reached the highest level of fine dining. But another unexpected door soon opened: television. At first, Ramsay did not see himself as a television personality. His first major appearance came in a documentary called Boiling Point, which followed the intense process of building and running a Michelin star restaurant. The cameras captured real moments from the kitchen: the pressure, the shouting, the chaos. Nothing was staged. Viewers saw a chef who demanded perfection and refused to compromise on standards. Some people were shocked by his intensity. Others found it fascinating. The documentary introduced Gordon Ramsay to a much wider audience. Soon after, new television opportunities followed. Programs like Kitchen Nightmares allowed Ramsay to enter struggling restaurants and confront the problems directly. He challenged owners, criticized poor cooking, and pushed teams to change their habits. The approach was blunt, sometimes uncomfortable, but it worked. Millions of viewers watched as Gordon Ramsay combined culinary expertise with brutal honesty. Restaurants improved, chefs learned, and audiences became deeply engaged with the drama of professional kitchens. Over time, Ramsay became more than a chef. He became a global television figure while still maintaining his identity as a working restaurateur. For many viewers around the world, Gordon Ramsay became the symbol of what high performance looks like when standards are never lowered. After decades in the spotlight, Gordon Ramsay has achieved something that very few chefs ever accomplish. He did not simply build successful restaurants. He built a lasting legacy. Restaurant Gordon Ramsay has maintained its 3 Michelin stars for more than 2 decades, an achievement that reflects consistency at the highest level. In an industry where most restaurants fail within the first few years, maintaining excellence for that long requires something deeper than talent. It requires systems, discipline, and a team that shares the same standards. But success in the kitchen was never the only measure of Gordon Ramsay's life. Family became the foundation that balanced everything else. Behind the intensity of the restaurants and television shows stands his wife, Tana. Their relationship began long before fame. When both of them were young and financially struggling, they built their life step by step, often taking risks that could have easily gone wrong. Together, they faced difficult moments, including personal loss that deeply affected their family. Those experiences reshaped Ramsay's understanding of what truly matters. Success in business means little without the people who stand beside you through the hardest moments. Today, Ramsay often speaks with pride about his children finding their own paths rather than simply entering the family business. One became a police officer, another joined the Royal Marines, others pursued education and creative careers. For Gordon Ramsay, that independence represents real success. Even after reaching global recognition, he continues chasing one more dream: winning a 3rd Michelin star in France. The birthplace of haute cuisine would complete a journey that began decades earlier in small kitchens and long training hours. But whether that final goal arrives or not, the story already carries its message. Success does not come from comfort. It comes from pressure, risk, and the willingness to keep moving forward even when the odds are uncertain. For anyone listening who feels trapped by their circumstances, Ramsay offers a simple truth: you do not need perfect conditions to build a better life. Progress begins with one decision, then another and another, step by step. And when the storm arrives, as it always does, the most important lesson may be the one Gordon Ramsay learned early in life: never fear the storm. Learn to dance in the rain.